There's gonna be a new mini set released in December in Pokemon TCG Pocket, and the game has some major issues that have to be addressed via this new mini set. In this video we're gonna talk about why it is so important to address these issues, what these issues are, and examples as to how to tackle them. So let's go and talk about it. Quick disclaimer first. This is not gonna be a video about general problems that this game has, like the lack of content, for example. I've already did a deep dive and a huge podcast talking about all this stuff in a previous video. This one right here is only about issues that you should fix by releasing new cards. The first issue I want to talk about is this ridiculously huge advantage that you get by going second. This is a game winning advantage in a lot of games, and those games are decided just because you didn't go second. If you go first, you are already in a very huge disadvantage, and this is an issue that has to be addressed really fast. And this new mini set is the perfect moment to do exactly that. So let's talk about some examples as to how to minimize this issue. And one example would be introducing new cards that say either one of two or three things. So let's take a look at Lily here, as that's a good example. I'm not talking about this specific effect, but yeah, it's just an example. Keep that in mind. So you could introduce cards that have very low value in general. Like example, draw a card. That's what the card does. But if you go first, you draw like 4 or 5 cards, you know? That wouldn't make the card dead if you go second, because you can still draw a card. But it would address the issue that if you go first and you have this card in your hand, you draw a huge amount of cards, and that minimizes the issue that you have by not being able to attach an energy. Or you could go the extreme route and say this card is only playable on your first turn, and if it's not your first turn and you didn't go first, then this card is unplayable. It doesn't do anything anymore. Then that would have to be a card that has extremely high value, you know? Like for example, Carmine that you see here, that says that discard your hand and draw an entire new hand. That would be 6 or 7 cards in Pocket's case. So that when you have your first hand, you go first, and your first turn, you have your starting hand, and you are able to play everything you can from your starting hand, then use this Carmine card and draw an entire new hand, right? That would again make up for the disadvantage that you have by going first. Alright, so yeah, keep in mind, those effects are just examples. The point I'm trying to get across here is you introduce either cards that have very low value in general, but very high value if you go first. Or you have cards that you can only play if you go first on your first turn, that have extremely high value, right? Those are two types of cards that you can introduce to minimize the lack of value that you gain from going first, you know? Negate the issue of not going second. I want to give you some more examples, because the cards that they have to introduce, they don't necessarily have to be like trainer cards or supporters. They can be Pokemon. Now let's take a look at that Raichu as an example. It has an attack that can only be used if you go first on your first turn, and it allows you to attach an energy to that Pokemon. This attack in Pokemon TCG Pocket would have to be at 0 energy costs, right? So yeah, you are able to attach an energy on your first turn, but since it's an attack, you end your turn by attaching that energy. You know, that's not too ridiculously overpowered, but it minimizes the issue of not going second. And that is exactly what they need to do with this new mini set. Another attack of this nature would be the one that the Sableye has here. Again, keep in mind, this attack would have to be at 0 energy costs. And what this attack does is, again, it can only be used if you go first and on your first turn, and it allows you to search your deck for any card you want. That also addresses another issue that this game has with, it's very important how you draw. You are very dependent on your draw, and having an attack that allows you to search the card of your dreams, so to speak, out of your deck would be absolutely fantastic. And it's again not too overpowered because it is locked behind you having to go first, and it has to be your first turn. That's the only way you can use this attack. So yeah, I think that would be kind of balanced, you know. So that's another very great example of how to negate the issue of not going second. And looking at this Terrapagos, it's also a very, very nice way to tackle the issue, because this one says it has an attack that's decent, right? What it says though is this attack cannot be used if you go second. That's also a fantastic way to tackle this issue, right? Because if you go first now, okay, that's a disadvantage because you can't attach an energy, so your opponent is always one step ahead. But if the opponent now has an attack that he can't use on his first turn if he goes second, that should balance the issue like almost perfectly. Like it's fantastic, right? Exactly what they need to. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is exactly what they have to introduce with the upcoming mini set. Those kinds of things. Because not going second it loses games way too often. So with all these examples out of the way, let's take a break real quick and talk about why it is so important that the developers tackle these issues immediately and with this new upcoming set. That is because if, let's say, they introduce this new mini set and it's kinda bad, it's pretty bad, it does not fix any issues, there's no attempt of minimizing any issues, what that would do is it would prove to us that these developers have no clue what they are doing. It would show us that they don't know in what state their game is. They are not aware of what the issues are. They are out of touch with their community, and they don't listen to what people complain about the most. Now they don't have to really fix these issues right away, but we have to see at least an attempt of trying to minimize these issues. If we don't see this, then this game is not going in a direction that is healthy. And this game is already unfinished and pretty unbalanced as well. Mewtwo is another huge example. We will talk about him in just a second. So if they leave these things out, if they leave these things like they are right now, that going first keeps losing your games, that Mewtwo dominates the entire game for 1 more month and a half, right? That's not good. Again, that would prove to us that the developers don't know and are not aware of what they have to do. And what I mean with the game is underdeveloped is, yeah, it should be obvious. There's a huge lack of content. Nothing is going on. We have no events. The shop is empty. There's no ranked mode. We are not able to even spectate our games, the games of our friends. We can't even chat to each other. If we want to add someone to our friend list, we need a secret code that includes 100 numbers, yada yada, right? As I said before, I already did a video talking about all this stuff in detail. So yeah, whatever. Let's now go and talk about another big issue in this game, that is Mewtwo, and how to tackle him by introducing new cards. So how could they deal with the Mewtwo issue? The answer here, that's just an example again, but keep in mind here, the answer that I came up with is introduce a proper counter. The best thing that we have right now against Mewtwo is Charizard. That is just a favorable matchup though. That is not a counter. And what we need to tackle the Mewtwo issue is a proper, real counter. So, what could we do? What could we introduce to counter that Mewtwo? We look at Mewtwo's weakness, that's Dark type. Alright, then we go and look what Dark type cards are available to us right now. And the cards that you see on your screen, that's the entire lineup for Dark Pokemon that are available right now in this game. Those and their pre-evolutions, of course. Nidoking and Nidoqueen are immediately just complete garbage, and Golbat is very questionable. It's also not good. All we have is Muk, Weezing and Arbok. And they're not gonna get the job done. They do not enough damage. Even with the weakness, the damage is not enough, and the HP pool, you know, you get it. So what is this lineup missing? And the answers should be very, very obvious. First of all, there's no proper basic Pokemon available here. Every basic Pokemon that the Dark type has sucks. Or is not good enough. So, see, there we already have. That's like 2 or 3 cards that you could add to the game that help with tackling the Mewtwo issue, because you can introduce good basic Pokemon that are fast enough and they can deal enough damage quickly enough thanks to the weakness to kill Ralts, or you know, deal enough damage to Mewtwo before it's ready, you know. That's one way to do it. Then another thing you notice when you look at this lineup is there is no EX Pokemon available at all. That's another thing. You see, add like 2 or 3 basic Pokemon. Maybe make one of those an EX. Maybe introduce 2 EX Pokemon for the Dark type. Why not, you know? For example, is Stage 3. Both of this Stage 2, sorry. Both of the Stage 2 that we have with Nidoqueen and Nidoking, they are both completely garbage and unplayable. So maybe you introduce the Stage 2 to us. Maybe you make that EX, you know, give us something that can one-shot Mewtwo, maybe. That would be a great counter. You know, that's what I came up with. That's one way to tackle Mewtwo. Of course, there's more. You can add stuff like energy removal or something that shuts down the ability of Gardevoir. You know, there are a lot of possibilities. But this is what I came up with, because Mewtwo's weakness is Dark type. So the Dark type is supposed to be a counter to Mewtwo. The Dark type is here to keep the Psychic types in check. And with no proper basic Pokemon, with no EX available to them, with no Stage 2 available to them, because both of them suck. Both of the two that we have right now, they both suck. So there's a lot of room for improvement for the Dark type. And it's made to counter the Psychic types, to keep them in check. And that is just not present in the game right now. So with a new mini set, with new cards added, go ahead and please nerf that Mewtwo. Give us a proper counter, something to keep that thing in check. The game desperately needs something like this. And I hope the developers are aware, they know, and they're gonna at least attempt to tackle this issue in a correct way. And moving on to the last two glaring issues that, I just want to mention them real quick. I'm not going to deep dive, otherwise the video is going to be way too long. But it's the aforementioned dependence on how you draw. For example, I play the Pikachu EX deck, right? And if I don't draw my Pikachu EX, my deck becomes completely unplayable. So what they need to do is introduce more options to let me draw cards and give me options to search out my deck for cards that I want. Like this Professor Oak and Professor's Research, and the Pokeball. That is just not enough, you know? We need more of those cards that let us draw and or search out cards from our deck. And yes, you can introduce more cards that makes us flip coins, but please don't do this excessive stuff anymore. Like, for example, the Moltres EX flip 3 coins, or this Zapdos EX flip 4 coins, or this Misty Lickitung bullshit that you flip infinite coins pretty much, right? That is too much. Like, if you have a card that it should be so that the maximum coins you flip per card is 2. 2 is the absolute maximum, like a Marowak EX does, for example. Like, that's fine. But please don't make it more than 2 coins. This is way too excessive. Like, I would keep it at flip 1 coin at maximum, right? Please no more bullshit like infinite amount of coin flips or 3, 4, you know, it is just way too excessive. And so those were all the issues I wanted to talk about. If they keep this in mind, then the game will be heading into a great future. If they completely ignore all of this stuff, then the game is gonna die out really quickly. So let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section down below. Did I forget about anything, or do you disagree, do you agree, whatever it is. I hope that was fun, but until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, and bye bye.